The crisis in Tibet appears to be escalating, with reports that Chinese forces have been ordered to shoot Tibetan protesters on sight after a midnight deadline to surrender passed. To mark the deadline, in a rare display of dissent, dozens of Tibetan students held a sit-in demonstration at a university for ethnic minorities in Beijing. China correspondent Stephen McDonnell and his cameraman were the only international media to make it inside the campus.
We'd heard about this gathering, a protest at the Central University for Nationalities. It's a campus which is known for having a large Tibetan student population in Beijing, and we turned up there to try and find out, only to see that the place was crawling with police and security officers who were stopping anybody from going into the campus unless you could prove that you were a student. So we went around for a while trying to get in, until eventually we found a section of the wall which is not being guarded, and the ABC's Beijing cameraman Rob Hill and I climbed over the wall, and we snuck around until we could get a vantage point of the main square to see what was happening. And what we came across was a truly remarkable sight. Dozens of students, presumably mostly Tibetans, holding candles in lines and waiting for this eerie deadline of midnight to pass. The deadline, of course, for people who were protesting earlier to hand themselves in Lhasa. Now they were sitting there silently still with their heads down as if praying, and their teachers seemed to be trying to convince them to get up and go back to their dormitories, but they just weren't saying anything. They were just all sitting there meditating and looking down at their candles. The students were surrounded by police and plainclothes officers from some agency. There are also university authorities and, of course, lots of other students watching what was going on. Now, they were, you'd have to say, being tolerated by the university authorities and by the police. I suppose we're leaving it to the teachers to try and diffuse this situation without it getting out of hand. I suppose they didn't, want some other conflict or something like that. Now, while they were tolerated, we certainly weren't. As soon as the police saw us there, they were asking us plenty of questions about who we were, how we got in, what we were doing there, and luckily we'd actually managed to sneak out some earlier vision that we filmed by the time the authorities came across us. And once we were discovered there was no more filming, we certainly had no opportunity to speak to the students, and they got us out of there quick smart. The problem with this, of course, is that there's nobody there to monitor what the authorities are doing in Tibet or the ethnic Tibetan regions of China. If they are killing people on site, there won't be any journalists there or anybody from international organisations to monitor that or to, I suppose, try and see that restraint is being carried out. So really, they're open to do whatever they like in these places which are effectively shut down to the outside world.